We are about to start the official opening ceremony of the PIDA week, third PIDA week. And may I invite the PS for information from the Republic of Namibia to do the honors. Sir.
Good morning. Honorable Alpheus Marusep, Minister of Works and Transport, Republic of Namibia. Honorable Kapanji Kalala, Minister of Energy, particularly Inga Hydro Project, Democratic Republic of the Congo. Dr. Mayaki, CEO of the NEPAD, all protocols observed. Shall we rise for the Namibian national anthem and the AU anthem? Namibia, land of the brave freedom fight, we have won. Glory to their bravery, whose blood waters our freedom. We give our love and loyalty together in unity. Contrast in beautiful Namibia, Namibia, our country, beloved land of savannas, hold high the banner of liberty. Namibia, our country, Namibia, Marala. Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories of our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let an acre the tree of life. Thank you. We may be seated. My name is Mbeuta Wanjarakana, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of ICT, Republic of Namibia, and I am blessed with the Christian role of directing the ceremonies of the official opening program this morning. As I have indicated, we have in our midst the Honorable Minister, Custodian of Works and Transport, Infrastructure Development in the country, accompanied by his dear brother, the Minister from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is quite non-coincidental, bearing in mind the close brotherly, sisterly ties between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Namibia, irrespective of us not sharing a visible common border. We are also glazed by the Chief Executive Officer of the New Economic Partnership for Africa Development, NEPAD. In our midst, we equally have the Deputy Executive Secretary of the SADC, and we have the Director for Infrastructure from the African Union Commission, among other executive presences in our midst this morning and this week. As we have just witnessed, we have gone into a melodious prayer encompassing the prayer in the Namibian language as well as the African language by expressing ourselves in those two anthems. For those that are not familiar with Namibia, it's over 10 years since Namibia has been singing the AU anthem at any official. It's more than 10 years, only that I failed to do the calculations. But we were the first country on the continent. We're the first country on the continent to remember when this anthem was first sung and bring it home. And that was not by no historical coincidence. The last born child at times does things that those that came to see the rays of the sun before her or him do take for granted. But to us, there is great meaning. The cradle that carried us was Africa, and therefore it's not just a question of singing the AU anthem. It's a question of going down the annals of the spiritual massage of our birth as a nation. In fact, earlier on I said I am blessed to be christened to direct the ceremonies this morning for the official opening. Now, typical of people who have been passed from one arm to the other, I'm being tempted to want to make what I cannot call a speech. But at this time, in juncture, I would like to request my dear brother, senior brother, and honorable Minister, Comrade Alpheus. And as I was thinking of coming to call his names, I was wondering whether the man of the cloth arrived earlier than the holy fire at the homestead, that I have only known him to have one name, Alpheus Ngarusep, the minister responsible for works and transport. He's a trade unionist, he's a peasant, he's a worker, and that's why perhaps he's heading the Ministry of Works and Transport for infrastructure, because somehow that's how it's for what God brought him, being a worker, a trade unionist. My brother and honorable minister, thank you for coming to do the honors on behalf of the Republic of Namibia to welcome and officiate this great week for us in Africa and in the Republic of Namibia. May you kindly take your podium.
Thank you.
Sorry, comrade. Sorry. I'm too fast.
Oh, he's too fast.
Yes. I just wanted to introduce the honorable minister by him standing next to me, not to ask him to speak. I have a very palatable cuisine of leaders who are blessing us with the charging messages for us to really prosecute the 1 week agenda of the PIDA week. And hence it's now my great honor to call on, and we are starting appropriately to set our stage for being at home, to call on Madam Emilie Ayaza Musho-Bekwa, Deputy Executive Secretary of the SADC Secretariat. Madam, she will not arrive here until we have given her a round of applause.
Thank you, Director of Ceremony. Honorable Minister of Works and Transport of the Republic of Namibia, our host. Honorable Ministers present here. Honorable Minister from DRC. The CEO of the NIPAD agency, the Director of Infrastructure of the African Union Commission, the representatives from international cooperating partners, regional, continental, international organizations, members of the media, distinguished delegates, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the SADC Executive Secretary, I would like to express our gratitude to the government and the people of Namibia for agreeing to host this important event of commemoration of the PIDA Week here in the beautiful coastal city of Swakopmund. We are indeed honored by your presence, mindful of your busy schedules, but still took time to participate in this auspicious occasion, which is clear testimony to your commitment to continental integration, cooperation, and poverty reduction. The legendary hospitality extended to all of us since our arrival, and the facilities that have been put at our disposal has no doubt provided the needed conducive environment for all parties to conduct our business. Allow me also to recognize the effort by the PIDA implementing partners, the NIPAD agencies, the NIPAD agency, the African Union Commission, the African Development Bank, and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa in preparing and financing this event. I wish to further recognize the support by other development partners, DBSA and GIZ, for the contribution in various forms toward making this event a success. Honorable ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, in January 2012, African leaders adopted the Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa, PIDA, and its priority plan, prioritizing continental programs to address Africa's infrastructure deficit. The role of infrastructure development articulated in PIDA is underscored by the AU Agenda 2063 as a means to facilitate regional integration, industrialization, and intra-regional trade, including the movement of people, goods, and services. The PIDA PAP is programmed for implementation into phases. The first with milestones to 2020, which is implementation of $68 billion priority investment plan. And the second with milestones to 2040, with investment in infrastructure development estimated over $300 billion. Achieving the 2020 milestones requires that we speed up on PIDA implementation, hence on the need for acceleration. You will recall the Dakar Financing Summit of 2014 identified the following challenges in the implementation of PIDA project. Lack of participation of private sector in infrastructure investment, lack of bankable project to be considered for investment by the private sector, lack of capacity by the public sector to prepare projects to bankability, and lack of financing by the public sector to prepare projects to bankability. Again. So far, what has been our response as SADC to those challenges? Responding to the identified challenges and working with the NIPAD agency, SADC has taken a multi-pronged approach to accelerate the preparation and implementation of PIDA projects and to unlock the region for regional integration. First, the corridor approach. The SADC Secretariat has embarked on an ambitious agenda of setting up multimodal development corridors. The SADC PIDA acceleration program on the Beira and North-South corridors was initiated in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, in June 2016, culminating into the signing of the corridor governance instrument for both the Beira and North-South corridors in Beira, Mozambique, in July 2017. The agenda set for these corridors is beyond just trade and transit facilitation. The scope includes industrialization, infrastructure development in the field of transport, energy, ICT, and water, as well as trade and regional economic development and integration. Spatial economic development along the corridor and the zones of influence are core and central to the corridor strategy. The corridor states wish to use the corridor as anchors and transformative catalysts for regional integration development as prioritized under the Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan. This approach will be replicated to other corridors with SADC. Secondly, as our response, we have the project prioritization and project pipeline formation. Within these two corridors we just mentioned, projects have been analyzed for PPP suitability and their impact on regional integration. A consistent methodology and algorithm has been developed to rank projects and form a project priority pipeline. Consultation with the private sector to determine which project from the pipelines, and also to gauge the appetite in investing in the project through project pre-market sounding and private sector high-level roundtables is done. Lastly, the third response is on capacity building. Working in collaboration with the NIPAD agency through the PIDA capacity building program, SADC Secretariat is allocated an annual budget since May 2016 to support project preparation to bankability and corridor development. This budget has been used to leverage financing from other development partners, such as JECA and GIZ, One-Stop Border Post Programs, DBSA and World Bank PPIAF project preparation, and SADC 3P, which is PPP advisory. Honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, while fast-tracking is important, we should remember that infrastructure development requires sustained effort from all stakeholders to maintain the momentum of implementation. Sustaining the momentum requires that in addition to political will, other necessary enabling conditions are availed. These include necessary policy, legal and regulatory environment to facilitate private sector participation and investment. We should also remember the important role infrastructure can play in job creation, hence the theme of this third PIDA week. Infrastructure development needs to be focused on inclusive approaches that take into account the entrepreneurship and employment needs of young people, empowering them to be active players in the infrastructure sector. It is, therefore, our call that we should never doubt the commitment of African and international business leaders to come together with the public sector to provide direction on Africa's infrastructure priorities using the PIDA week as a platform for discussions. Before I conclude my remarks, I wish to congratulate the government of Namibia for the leadership role demonstrated for opening up Namibia and designating Namibia as an international logistics hub within the Continental Presidential Infrastructure Championship Initiative. Connecting Namibia with its neighboring countries, I'm also aware of the strides taken by the government of Namibia in consulting her neighboring countries, which are Angola, Botswana, DRC, Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Zambia, for collaboration during the development and implementation of the proposed project. In the region, we are also alive to the fact that the Namibia government has provided land to government of Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and recently DRC to establish the dry ports in Walvis Bay. This is indeed a clear testimony and commitment of the Government of Namibia to the SADC regional integration agenda. It is a true reminder of what our principals, head of state, and government have signed up in the Protocol of Transport, Communications, and Metrology. The protocol requires the SADC member states to apply a number of principles. And actually, it is in application of these principles consistently and uniformly during the formulation of our policies and regulation, and applying to the same during enforcement, that will go a long way to improve the efficiency of our regional corridors. Honorable ministers, distinguished delegates, let me end my remarks here by underscoring the needs for partnership as the main strategy to implement regional as well as continental infrastructure. It is our belief that shared ownership is a core attribute of successful partnership. Prioritization of the projects of regional and continental program at the national level is therefore a critical link in the implementation of the regional and continental initiatives. It is when regional and continental projects are treated as national priorities that complementary funds are likely to be raised by regional and continental organizations for the implementation. Let's therefore focus our efforts to establishing and strengthening these partnerships. As your secretariat, we remain committed to supporting and coordinating such initiatives. I thank you.
She has not sat yet. Thank you for the escort. I wonder what else can Africa do to convince the world that we mean business for our future by gathering here today on a public holiday. It's a public holiday today, so if you need something, don't look to find a shop open. But with our NEPAD family, we are still able to gather here and do work. I think holiday is very modern to Africa. We have always looked to the sun rising and knowing that the clock is on for us to work. Thank you, Madam Emilia Ayaza Mushobekwa, Deputy Executive Secretary, for your indeed warm maternal welcome to our gathering this morning. It's my distinguished pleasure to invite Mr. Shem Simuyemba, Coordinator NEPAD, on behalf of the African Development Bank Vice President. He will not rise until we have our hands together. Let's escort him to the podium.
Honorable Minister, Dr. Mayaki, Honorable Minister from DRC, thank you very much for the honor. Actually, Honorable Minister MC, it was because the Honorable Minister from DRC was, so it's in order. So I mean, since you asked me to stand, I'll just say one word. Distinguished delegates, on behalf of the African Development Bank, the bank has always been a family part of PIDA, because as has been said since morning, we work very closely with the African Union Commission, the NEPAD agency, but also the regional economic communities. Just to make a few quick points, the bank was actually responsible for coordinating the studies leading to the formulation of PIDA. And the bank has also been responsible for providing financial support, I think nearly $10 million, for the PIDA capacity building project, through which we've managed to put experts at the AUC, at the NEPAD agency, but also the African economic communities. And as you heard this morning, we are proud to say that as the African Development Bank, we've been part of the development of Namibia Port. I think we've provided one of the largest loans in the bank in terms of building the second container terminal in Welvis Bay just next door. So we are happy with that partnership. But just to say, as I said this morning, we've been a partner of African development for 50 years. We'll continue to be a partner of Africa's development. And let me conclude by just saying that our president, Adesina, is very passionate about scaling up the presence of the African Development Bank on the continent. The bank lends on average $10 billion annually, out of which half of that goes to infrastructure. But his idea is to scale that up two ways. One is to have a larger presence on the continent through the 5 regional hubs that have been established across the 5 regions of Africa. One of those hubs is in Southern Africa, here in Centurion in South Africa. The second is what some of you may be familiar with, which our president at the bank is very passionate about, which he calls the 5 focus areas of ADB in support of the overall Agenda 2063 of the African Union, which is to feed Africa, which is the first thing, which is the agriculture, agro-value chain. The second is to light up and power Africa. The third is to integrate Africa. The fourth is to industrialize Africa. The fifth is to improve the quality of lives of Africans, including, we have a program that we call Creating Jobs for Africa, Creating Jobs for Youth in Africa, as a deliberate theme across all bank interventions on the continent. As I conclude, let me thank you, Honorable Minister, for the wonderful welcome to Swakopmund and to this part of Africa. As a bank, we have the privilege to work in all parts of our continent. And sitting from that vantage point, we can see that Africa is getting more integrated, it's getting closer, and it's getting tighter as a country in terms of expanding opportunities for the majority of our people. So we continue to be a partner, a faithful partner, and you can count on us, and our doors are open to continue to collaborate with you all in developing this wonderful continent that we have. And incidentally, Honorable Minister, I like to say this, that people who have cell phones, you can Google that for yourselves, because we don't normally understand how big our continent is. Now, if you Google on your telephone, you Google the diameter of the Earth as the Earth that we are in from end to end, not the radius. The radius is the half point, the diameter. Find the distance for that, and Google the driving distance from Cape Town to Cairo. You'll find that it's almost the same, and that will surprise you. Thank you, Honorable Minister.
We are indeed the cradle of humanity. The African Union Commission has dispatched Mr. Cheikh Beda, Director for Infrastructure and Energy, AUC, on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Amani Abou Zaid, Commissioner, Infrastructure and Energy. He has a topical statement to offer us this morning. And as the rule, no one will rise to come here if there is no escort.
Excellency Minister of Works and Transport in Namibia, Excellency Honorable CEO of NEPAD, Excellency Minister of DRC, Excellency and dear Sister Deputy Executive Secretary of SADC, Honorable Delegates, representative of ADB, UNECA, EU, GIZ, JICA, and others. First of all, on behalf of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, I have the honor to express our sincere appreciation to the President of the Republic of Namibia and the Government of Namibia for the warm hospitality extended to us since our arrival in this beautiful city of Swakopmund. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Napuseb, Minister of Works and Transport, representing the Namibian government. We highly appreciate your presence in this opening ceremony as demonstration of your government's commitment to advocate and promote Africa's interests. I would also like to reiterate our gratitude to the SADC Secretariat and the Namibian authorities for their efforts in facilitating this important event. My gratitude also goes to the African Development Bank, the Southern African Development Bank, and GIZ for their technical and financial support for this event. This week is a very special week for the African Union Commission, NEPAD Agency, African Development Bank, the UN Economic Commission for Africa, and all partners here presented today. This meeting is critical for advancing infrastructure development on the continent, a pillar for the African Renaissance, integration, and prosperity as reflected in the EU Agenda 2063. Through our mandate to promote regional integration and sustainable development in Africa, the African Union Commission is driving the vision towards regional infrastructure development through many initiatives, including mainly the Programme for Infrastructure Development in Africa, PIDA. At the January summit this year, heads of state agreed to proposals from Rwanda's President Paul Kagame that the organization should focus only on a limited number of key priorities with continental scope, such as political affairs, peace and security, and continental integration, and the institutional structure should be redesigned to reflect this. To this effect, the African Union Commission is refocusing its emphasis to ensuring that Africa is adequately linked physically in order to enhance the integration of its peoples, especially its youth, economically, socially, and culturally. PIDA, which serves as a reference program for regional and continental infrastructure development in Africa, aims to facilitate economic and social integration on the African continent through the creation of continental and regional markets in line with the EU Agenda 2063 aspiration and goals. As part of implementation of PIDA Priority Action Plan, the annual PIDA Week offers a valuable opportunity for decision makers, private sector, civil society, and academia to exchange views towards sound realization of PIDA projects on the ground. The last PIDA Week, which was held in Abidjan in November 2016, saw some vital outcomes. This year, the event themes promoting job creation and economic transformation through regional infrastructure development intends to build on the relative achievement and the momentum created in the previous event to continue to engage stakeholders on the effective delivery of infrastructure on the continent. Excellencies, honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, Africa has the fastest growing demographics in the world. These could be an asset for change, progress, and dynamism. If Africa is going to achieve the desired economic growth envisioned by the EU Agenda 2063, it will have to provide employment opportunities for its growing young population. Today's generation of young people in Africa is the largest the world has ever known. About half of Africa's population of 1.1 billion is under the age of 25. Failure to effectively deal with deepening unemployment among Africa's growing youth population could seriously erode the economic gains achieved across the continent in recent years. The challenge of creating enough jobs and opportunities for the large African youth population entering the labor market is one of the major challenges our continent faces. The essential benefits of regionally integrated approach to infrastructure development are to make possible the formation of large competitive markets in place of small, fragmented, and inefficient ones, and to lower costs across production sectors so as to stimulate industrialization and growth and consequently enabling job creation. PIDA should play an important role in narrowing the gap between job creation and unemployment. To that end, public decision makers and private sector management are urged to actively undertake training and skills acquisition in infrastructure development, particularly in building roads, rail system, power generation, power transmission system, and ICT connectivity, in order to enable young Africans to be well prepared for the implementation of complex programs such as PIDA. Obviously, we can only achieve this target if important resources are timely mobilized for the project. The dimension should be at the top of national and regional priorities to allow a satisfactory level of implementation. Let me put special emphasis on private sector participation, especially African players, due to the high need of financial resources and quality of projects which allow good business opportunity. In this regard, I would like to recall key recommendations both from the previous PIDA week and the Specialized Technical Committee on Transport, Intercontinental and Interregional Infrastructure, Energy and Tourism held in March 2017 in Lomé, Togo. First, the continent needs, as a matter of urgency, to scale up capacity for project preparation in terms of resources, skills and development of bankable project pipeline. Second, strengthening the regional project preparation as power interconnector and major highway are requiring larger capital for project preparation. There is a need for commitment from project sponsors and particularly governments to share and mitigate project risks. Third, enhanced links and engagement with potential financiers and at the early stage of the project cycle, as well as the downstream level, is required to ensure better financing proposed for prepared projects. And finally, creating the necessary enabling environment, institution, regulatory framework, sector reforms, competition laws, standards, transparent procurement, etc., in a more coordinated, holistic, and integrated manner across countries and regions as the basis for creating larger and more viable regional markets for infrastructure services. Excellencies, honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, since the inception of the PIDA program in 2012 by the African heads of state and government, a lot of progress has been made in the implementation of regional projects across the continent. With regard to the project development as of December 2017, from 433 PIDA projects, we are pleased to announce the following status. And it's following our data collection efforts. 46 projects are at concept. 40 are pre-feasibility. 30 are at feasibility. 30 are at detailing structuring. 18 are at financing. 19 are at tendering. 83 are at construction. And 50 are in operation. The African Development Bank acknowledges that even though the cost of PIDA project is very high, the cost of not implementing PIDA projects bears higher impact to the sustainable development of the continent. It is imperative to analyze the cost of inaction, its impact in the future economic growth of Africa. PIDA projects have so far created jobs and will continue to create employment in the region. For instance, the Dar es Salaam port expansion is expected to generate 2.6 billion revenue per year if effectively implemented to the Tanzanian government and neighboring countries. The Abidjan-Lagos corridor is expected to boost trade of goods and performance of other sectors such as tourism, mining, and agriculture in West Africa as well. The Inga 3 power project is geographically beneficial to the entire continent and will lead to increased power trade and supply to millions of Africans and also to contribute in implementing the energy market in Africa. At the African Union Commission, we are already in the process of carrying out a midterm review of the PIDA PAP in order to assess the current projects on the ground and also to select projects for the next cycle of PIDA implementation, which is from 2020 to 2030. It is our strong expectation that the new phase of program will leverage partner support towards a comprehensive package of PIDA implementation strategy. As we focus on PIDA that will result in integration Africa, our attention is drawn to rural and remote areas in Africa that are in dire need of access to basic infrastructure. In that regard, the EUC is proposing a strategy with renewed focus to infrastructure development in rural and remote areas through an integrated approach that will prioritize programs that deliver routes, energy, and ICT to help these regions leapfrog in their development trajectory. We are convinced that such a pragmatic paradigm shift is necessary in order to achieve our very own Agenda 2063. Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it is very clear that PIDA at this time is gaining a lot of momentum. We are beginning to see focus from our member states towards the development of projects on the ground. The PIDA program has also become a reference program for infrastructure development in Africa. The continental and regional institutions are also focused on addressing the challenges of infrastructure development in Africa. For instance, the heads of state and government of member states of the African Union EU and European Union EU met in Abidjan on 29-30 November 2017 this year on the occasion of our 5th African Union European Union Summit and reaffirmed their commitment to PIDA. In fact, during the opening session of the EU-Africa Business Forum organized on the sideline of the EU Summit, the Vice President of Cote d'Ivoire, Her Excellency Mr. Daniel Duncan, emphasized PIDA as key driver for Africa's socio-economic transformation and regional integration. And later, in a joint declaration, the summit has confirmed commitment to implement concrete strategies and support the implementation of PIDA projects. Excellencies, I would like to conclude by stressing that infrastructure development on the continent will be critical to achieving economic transformation of Africans, especially the youth. It is therefore appropriate that PIDA Week is taking place to facilitate discussion amongst governments, development partners, civil society, financial institutions, and private sector on ways of accelerating the delivery of regional and continental infrastructure development in Africa. It is a dialogue that will not end here, but one that should be encouraged to go on for the sake of integrating our continent as stipulated in Agenda 2063. Finally, I would like to thank the organizers and the sponsors for all arrangements made. It's my pleasure to wish us very success as we deliberate on this important topic. Thank you for kind attention.
I have choreographed the session this morning in the following format, that we are at a referral medical facility, and Madam Mushobekwa mobilized logistics. Mr. Simuyemba assured us that there was enough fuel to deliver the patient to the medical facility. Mr. Sheikh Benda has just laid out the equipment that the physician will need to get into the theater and work on the patient. And when the surgeon emerges from the theater, we will see in his face whether the patient has been saved or we need a man of the cloth. It's my honor to invite Dr. Ibrahim Asani Mayaki, Chief Executive Officer of the NEPAD agency, to give us a statement. And then I will, yes. You know, I'm auctioning this space, and if there are no applause, I will not put the hammer down. Doctor, take your space.
Thank you, Program Director, and thank you for having guessed that I'm a frustrated surgeon. Yeah, when I was small, my dream was to become a surgeon. So thank you for reminding me that. Honorable Minister of Works and Transport, Honorable Minister of DRC in charge of INGA, representative of the AUC Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy, Deputy Executive Secretary of SADC, honorable partners from the African Development Bank, DBSA, GIZ, JICA, and the European Union. Let me first start by thanking very warmly the Government of Namibia for the hospitality and all the conditions that have been gathered so that this meeting can be a success. In 2012, it has been mentioned already, the African heads of states and government adopted the program for infrastructure development in Africa as the continental strategic infrastructure framework for the African Union stakeholders and partners. So we defined a strategy, and our aim is to stick to that strategy. But 2 years later, 2 years after the rollout of PIDA, the expectations of having public-private partnerships, PPPs, in the project implementation process was not yet actualized in 2014. And as a result of that, President Macky Sall of Senegal called for the Dakar Financing Summit, and at this summit, African heads of states and government, including leaders of industry and finance, recognized the lack of technical capacity for project preparation as one of the key bottlenecks to driving PIDA projects toward financial close. Consequently, the summit mandated the NEPAD agency to develop a specific instrument to address this challenge. So pursuant to the recommendation by the Dakar Summit, the African Union Commission and the NEPAD agency established the PIDA Service Delivery Mechanism, SDM, as an instrument that tackles the lack of technical capacity during the project preparation phase. And the core mission of this instrument is to make Africa's cross-border infrastructure projects technically sound, economically feasible through sound technical advisory services. So through SDM, we have, for example, worked with ECOWAS to institutionally and legally design the setup of a supranational project management authority for the Abidjan-Lagos corridor, a road corridor which transports more than 75% of all traded goods in West Africa. Furthermore, the Dakar Summit also mandated the NEPAD agency to increase and coordinate private sector participation in PIDA projects through the Continental Business Network, CBN, an initiative that serves as a high-level continental platform to enable private sector representatives to share with African decision makers their views and recommendations to improve the business environment in Africa, specifically with regard to infrastructure financing. And this dialogue between high-level public policy makers and private sector representatives is an essential part of the implementation of PIDA. So building on the guidance and recommendations of the Continental Business Network, CBN, we continued to convene influential stakeholders responsible for investment allocation decision in Africa. And this year, under the leadership of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, was launched the 5% Agenda. And the 5% Agenda is a campaign to increase investment allocations by African asset owners into African infrastructure from its low base of about 1.5% of their assets under management to an impactful 5%. So the 5% Agenda launch is a follow-up to the 2016 CBN meeting on de-risking Africa's infrastructure and PIDA projects, In other words, the issue of Africa being a risky investment destination is more a perception than a reality. Therefore, the de-risking report and its instruments highlight the investment potential of African pension and sovereign wealth funds. Now, in the 5 years following the adoption of PIDA, we have concentrated our efforts on power generation projects. And through significant progress during this period, which have been reminded to us by the Director of Infrastructure and Energy of the African Union Commission, many countries have closed the generation gap, and some are currently experiencing excess capacity of power generation. South Africa, Ghana, Ethiopia, Zambia, to name a few, are expected to experience excess capacity. However, Africa's current major problem is how to expand and strengthen our transmission network. We therefore need to double our efforts on regional transmission projects, such as the Zambia, Tanzania, Kenya Power Interconnector, ZTK. These projects have the potential to promote power interconnection across the continent and facilitate the creation of a Pan-African power market. In addition, regional transmission networks are enablers for the stimulated development of new power generation projects and electricity export potential. An interconnected Pan-African market will consequently improve the overall quality, accessibility, and affordability of electricity, and the regional power pools in Central Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa, West Africa have a major role to play. The larger market that a regional power pool could potentially serve is also more attractive for investors and development partners compared to small national electricity grids that serve smaller populations. As we are heading towards 2020, the deadline of the first phase of PIDA Priority Action Plan, I would like us to pay particular attention to the aviation and air transportation in Africa for the next phase of a project. As you may know, 80% of air traffic in Africa is carried by non-African airlines. 80% of air traffic in Africa is carried by non-African airlines. Most notable, while the continent constitutes over 70% of the world's population, our own airlines carry less than 3% of the global air traffic. Our own airlines carry less than 3% of the global air traffic. We therefore need to increase our participation to this global market by designing national and regional aviation master plans. Most of our countries have sectorial master plans, agriculture, transport, education, you name it, but have paid less attention to the aviation sector. Point number two, we need to ease the free air movement of people and stimulate affordable air transportation prices. To this effect, we need to take the necessary regional and continental regulatory and policy reforms towards the single African air transport market. And this is a priority, an absolute priority of the current chairperson of the African Union Commission. PIDA Week is an opportunity for us to reflect on these issues and together strategize on how best we can maximize the opportunities before us. With these few remarks, I wish you fruitful deliberation, a successful PIDA week, and I have just three messages. Three messages: think PIDA, think regional, and think implementation. Thank you.
The patient is worked on. Now the father is going in first to check and allow us to visit the patient. By visiting the patient is when we will be prosecuting the entire PIDA Week program, given the onerous responsibility of carving our destiny in infrastructure in Africa and connecting ourselves to the world as generous African family members of the international community, the world family, and not, I reserve the word that begins with a G. It is my, and on your behalf, my multifaceted honor to request our Honorable Minister to allow us to work, to come and give us matching working orders to deliver for the continent what no one else than ourselves can deliver to the continent and through us to humanity. Comrade Alpheus Ngarusep.
This time around, I'm not going off. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was telling our director, very able director that is, of our progress, I'm not going to say proceedings, of our progress, that this time around, I'm not going to get off the stage. Director of Proceedings, my name is Alpheus Ngarusep. Try the phonetics. I am the minister responsible for works and transports in the land of the brave. That's another name for Namibia. You know, you must have listened to the lyrics of our national anthem. We are brave people. But before I dwell on that, I want to recognize the presence of my dear colleague from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I will have to read the name because I'm also very particular how my name is pronounced, and I don't want to make the mistake of pronouncing his name the way it's not supposed to be pronounced, but he will be understanding. Honorable Ladislas Kapanji Nzambi Mfumu. Not correct. That's a name they gave me here. That's a name they gave me, the minister in charge of Inga. I'm absolutely sorry. But let me, suffice me saying that the minister from the Democratic Republic of Congo the correct name is His Excellency Bruno Kapanji Kalala. Someone who'd run the risk of being disciplined because they gave me this list. We will not go deeper into that, but something is going to happen here. I would also like to recognize the presence of Dr. Ibrahim Asane Mayaki, Chief Executive Officer, NEBAT Agency. I was getting a little bit concerned about the not so gender sensitive composition of the head table here. That's why I am so pleased to recognize the presence of Sister Emily Asasa Mushopekwa, the Deputy Secretary of the SADC Secretariat. Welcome, Sister. Applaud for her, she's the only one there. I would also like to recognize the presence of Mr. Shem Simuyemba, Coordinator, African Development Bank, NEPAD IPPF, on behalf of the African Development Bank Vice President. Equal courtesies I do also extend to Mr. Sheikh Beda, Director of Infrastructure and Energy, AUC, on behalf of His Excellency Dr. Amani Abou Zaid, Commissioner, Infrastructure and Energy. Representatives of GIZ, JICA, and the European Union, all distinguished delegates from Namibia and across the continent, media representatives, distinguished guests. I was not informed whether the local leadership of the Erongo region is present. If they are present, I equally welcome you. Governor, town councillors, I want to greet you with a warm welcome to our beautiful coastal holiday resort, Swakopmund. I'm sure you have experienced the warm welcome nature that the world-renowned holiday resort is able to offer you. Do I get takers that you have already experienced the hospitality? Don't be shy. Yes, acknowledge if you did. Thank you. It is my great honor and pleasure to have been accorded the opportunity to open the third PIDA Week 2017. The PIDA program for infrastructure development in Africa was developed by the African Union Commission, NEPAD Planning and Coordinating Agency, African Development Bank, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and regional economic communities to promote regional economic integration by bridging Africa's infrastructure gap. PIDA aims to accelerate the delivery of current and future regional continental infrastructure projects in transport, energy, information communications, and technology, and transboundary water. The AU heads of state and government adopted PIDA in January 2012 as the reference program for regional and continental infrastructure development in Africa. PIDA builds on the master plans and priorities of regional economic communities and African member states that concentrate on both hard and soft cross-border infrastructure to boost cooperation and trade within the continent. PIDA thus aims to facilitate economic and social integration on the African continent through the creation of continental and regional markets, enable countries to meet forecast demand for infrastructure services, and boost competitiveness by 1, increasing efficiencies, 2, accelerating economic growth, 3, facilitating integration in the world economy, and 4thly, improving living standards, and last but not the least, unleashing intra-African trade. Covering 4 main sectors of transport, energy, information and communication technology, and transboundary water, PIDA programs are divided into 3 main implementation phases. That is short term, 2012 to 2020, medium term, 2020 to 2030, and long term, I'm told, 2030 to 2040. Since 2012, yeah, that's technology that we are aspiring to master so that we at gatherings like that would be able to put it in silent mode. Since 2012, the African Commission, in collaboration with the implementing partners, the NEPAD Planning and Coordinating Agency, the African Development Bank, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and the REX have been concentrating on ensuring the delivery of the short-term priorities and objectives of PIDA, referred to as PIDA Priority Action Plan, comprising of 51 programs and projects. We shall intentionally ignore that sound. What's happening? Some of us come from the background that when you hear an unfamiliar sound, you are very vigilant and alert. Oh yeah, good. Because any other things can follow shortly thereafter. You understand, eh? Good. Director of Progress, distinguished guest, the implementing partners of PIDA have recorded significant achievements and progress in various aspects, from establishment of institutional and operational structures to facilitation of project preparation and implementation. Some of these achievements include decomposition of 51 PIDA programs into 443 individual projects features in order to provide tracked implementation progress and facilitate discussions with investors. Operationalization of the institutional architecture for infrastructure development in Africa, structures including the establishment of the Council for Infrastructure Development and Infrastructure Advisory Group, implementation of the PIDA Capacity Building Program funded by the African Development Bank, providing expert consultants to the African Union Commission, NPCA and REX to support and strengthen the institution's capacities in 1, monitoring, evaluation and reporting, 2, information, communication and marketing, thirdly, project preparation support, and fourthly, institutional and organizational development, amongst others. Creation of the Continental Business Network, acting as the highest level platform for private sector involvement in PIDA projects. Establishment of the NEPAD Infrastructure Projects Preparation Fund to advance projects to bankability through funding for project preparation. It's a long list. Organization of the Dakar Financing Summit, where 16 projects were prioritized for engagement between private investors and public project developers. Creation of the PIDA system delivery mechanism to provide project owners with technical advisory services for early stage project preparation. Development of deployment of the PIDA communication strategy, including the establishment of a PIDA journalist network, the establishment of the Presidential Infrastructure Champions Initiative for high-level support and advocacy for selected PIDA projects from participating heads of states. Implementation of the virtual PIDA Information Center as a one-stop portal for PIDA information and to support monitoring of progress in PIDA implementation. I'm so glad the listing is over now. Director of Ceremony, in conclusion, from the project presentations, stakeholders and participants will emerge from PIDA Week with better understanding of the status of selected projects, challenges faced in their implementation, as well as the way forward to address these challenges. Participants will also gain insights in the packaging of projects, the creation of enabling environment for transboundary infrastructure projects, project preparation, and how to move projects to bankability. The thematic session on job creation and trade facilitation will highlight practical examples and recommendations on how to leverage PIDA projects for economic transformation, which we so dearly need in our part of the world. Now, when some of us reach this specific juncture, we want to expound, but I don't want to run the risk of saying things that maybe some people wouldn't want to hear, but transformation, economic transformation is absolutely relevant in order for us to be able to move, in order for us to be able to forge ahead with unity, within the spirit of reconciliation. And you might have heard of the concept Ubuntu. You know, we cannot have a lopsided economy and think that the commodity that we so dearly strive to preserve, peace and stability, will be there forever. We have to be able to consciously and intentionally work towards creating that equilibrium, the balance. As people of this great continent, to be able to sustain the peaceful coexistence of the residents of Africa. Right now, when we talk about the economic realities of Africa, in the part that I know very well, Namibia, I don't want to talk about other countries. As much as we are 27 years down the route of political freedom, there is a dire need for economic emancipation of the masses of our people. And that is something that you cannot buy online, isn't it? It's only some of us from villages who still seemingly go to shops and queue. The only good thing nowadays is that the queue is just for everybody. In the past, it used to be different queues, if you understand what I mean. We need to talk about those things in the past that we come from. And that is really the only remedy that will enable us to move forward. But if we deliberately avoid talking about the not so pleasant things that we have to overcome as people. The healing process will not be easy. And we want the healing process to be managed by us jointly. All of us together must be own up to the process of equalizing, at least to create an atmosphere where no one should be left out and go to bed hunger. I don't know whether I make sense, because people are just looking at me. Because in order for us to develop our infrastructure, open up the shores to landlocked African countries, we need to take on board development of the human capital as well. And how do you develop the human capital? I have intentionally decided to ignore this prepared statement, because it becomes easier when you talk off the cuff, isn't it? Now, infrastructure needs skills to be developed. Infrastructure needs the most important asset of all, human beings. And then if we really want to achieve sustainable development without having due regard to develop the human capital in all aspects that it needs to be developed and empowered, then the very beautiful words that we at gatherings of this kind would be sharing with one another, in my humble opinion, would be exercises in futility. I think it's safe to go back to my prepared statement. And then incidentally, that brings me to the end of my statement. and with and then I feel distinctly and profoundly honored to have been bestowed the honor of declaring this meeting officially open. Thank you.
Here we say Omake. Yes. Honorable Minister, before we respond to your invitation of visiting the patient, I'm sure with your indulgence, you'll agree with me that this will be the only opportunity where you will be with your brother, His Excellency Bruno Kapanji Kalala, Minister in the Presidency responsible for the Inga project. And since in an African setting, you will need to hear your brother and guest to say a word to your common family. I have the honor to request our dear leader, His Excellency Bruno Kapanji Kalala, to say a few words for us to hear his voice and get the message from our Democratic Republic of the Congo, the message of Christmas, Your Excellency. I would request We need to wear our Christmas gear.
Je me rends compte que mon frère, monsieur le directeur, est chrétien. Il parle déjà de Noël. Je voudrais vous en remercier, que Dieu vous bénisse. Excellence, monsieur le ministre, mon frère, chers collègues, mesdames et messieurs, à vos titres et qualités respectifs, je vous dis bonjour et je vous souhaite bonne fête de Noël et de fin d'année. Merci pour m'avoir donné l'occasion de dire un mot à cette cérémonie d'ouverture et je remercie mon frère le ministre d'avoir ouvert les travaux et de commencer ces travaux avec ce mot, ce message que je donne. Le message qui vient de la République démocratique du Congo, dont avait parlé un grand scientifique africain qui avait dit « Si l'Afrique a la forme de revolver, la gâchette se trouve au Congo. » Il parlait de la libération de l'Afrique. Et mon frère a bien dit, a bien fait de terminer par la libération de l'Afrique. Et il a fait allusion à l'indépendance de ce pays que nous saluons. En juin, j'ai accordé une interview à plusieurs chaînes et j'avais dit, si l'Afrique énergétique veut exister, et elle va exister, la gâchette du marché d'énergie électrique en Afrique se trouve à Inga. Je suis Bruno Kapanji Kalala. Bruno, c'est mon nom chrétien. Kapanji, c'est le nom que m'a donné mon oncle maternel. Alors mon père, un peu jaloux, il a dit, vous devez mettre aussi mon nom, et il a ajouté Kalala. C'est comme ça que je porte le nom de mon oncle et le nom de mon père. Pour parler de cette session, je vais juste dire un mot. Puisque mon frère a parlé de Noël, rappelons-nous que Dieu lui-même qui a créé le monde a constaté qu'il n'était pas bon de vivre dans les ténèbres. Il a séparé les ténèbres d'avec la lumière. Et il a appelé lumière jour, les ténèbres nuit, et ce fut le premier jour. Je croyais que vous alliez applaudir. Le premier jour a été créé, constaté par Dieu lui-même lorsqu'il a créé l'énergie, lorsqu'il a créé la lumière. Je ne suis pas contre des autres infrastructures. C'est ça le message personnel. Après plus de 40 ans dans différents services, différents ministères, je me suis rendu compte qu'effectivement, c'est l'électricité qui fait l'homme développé, qui donne à l'homme la lumière, l'intelligence, la vision, la politique. Je remercie les organisations, les organisateurs, PIDA, Banque africaine de développement, qui assistent surtout à la préparation du grand projet INGA. Et nous avons une session sur INGA. Quand nous serons là, nous pourrons donner des détails. Mais ce que je voudrais dire, c'est que l'Afrique, ça vient de mon expérience personnelle. Si l'Afrique veut aller vite dans la création d'emplois, dans la création des infrastructures, dans la création du mieux-être, dans l'amélioration des conditions de vie des populations, l'Afrique doit prioriser ses projets, particulièrement les projets PIDA, c'est un conseil. J'ai examiné pourquoi la Chine est arrivée où elle est aujourd'hui. C'est parce qu'il y a eu une vision sur les Chinois. Faire de la Chine un pays économiquement très fort, une puissance économique, financière et même sociale. Les États-Unis ont fait ça. L'Europe l'a fait en commençant par le secteur de l'énergie. Rappelez-vous la CECA, Communauté de l'acier et du charbon, créée en 1951. Ensuite est venu le marché commun européen. Aujourd'hui, nous avons l'Union européenne. Ils sont partis de l'énergie. Ne nous trompons pas, souvent, ne nous dispersons pas. Nous avons besoin de l'énergie électrique. Et le marché électrique africain qui est soutenu par l'Union africaine et accompagné sur le plan de préparation financièrement par la Banque africaine de développement, nous montre qu'il faut faire des interconnexions en partant de l'Éthiopie avec la centrale de Renaissance, passer par Mozambique, interconnecter avec l'Afrique du Sud et puis la RDC Inga, Guinée-Conakry, et rejoindre le pôle nord de l'énergie thermique avec les centrales qui sont nombreuses, en Égypte, en Algérie, au Maroc. Le Maroc qui est déjà interconnecté avec l'Union européenne par l'Espagne. Ainsi, nous aurons jeté les bases de la création de la véritable Union africaine que nous attendons tous. Merci beaucoup pour cette occasion que vous m'avez donnée. Nous parlerons de Inga. En ce qui concerne la seule information que je peux vous donner, c'est que Inga, la préparation avance très très vite. Nous avons mis beaucoup de temps, mais maintenant les choses sont claires. Nous avons 2 groupements qui sont aujourd'hui en train de négocier en Chine, à Beijing, pour créer un groupement unique, un consortium unique entre Espagnols et Chinois. Et ils vont présenter une offre unique à la fin de ce mois. Et après examen de cette offre, nous allons leur donner la concession pour financer, réaliser des études complémentaires, exécuter le projet dans un consortium, plutôt une concession particulière sous forme de BOT. Donc, le message, c'est que vous devez soutenir ce projet parce que, quel que soit le lieu où vous serez, lorsque nous aurons ce marché énergétique interconnecté en marche, et ce n'est pas pour longtemps, vous aurez tous à bénéficier de l'énergie d'Inga, si pas directement, mais indirectement, parce qu'il y aura création d'emplois, il y aura production de produits qui vont circuler dans tout le pays, et surtout, il y aura l'intégration économique et plutôt infrastructurelle qui va nous aider à aller de l'avant. Et je vous remercie.
Another round of applause. You know, when my brother Hueman recommended that I direct this ceremony, he forgot to say until when. I'm only realizing now that my contract is coming to an end before I put a full stop to a renewal application. But it was indeed gratifying. I pity my brothers and sisters in the media that they will have a very troubled Christmas, given the amount of information, education, and their role to inform and educate more, that there should be no Christmas. Please, even if you continue working on the 25th, don't come and ask for an overtime from me. We owe it to our citizens of the continent to inform them. We owe it to the world to appreciate that as Africans, we are up in peaceful arms to develop ourselves. Honorable ministers and the high table, it is my honor before requesting my brother Makokera to return to the podium that we rise to signify the closure of the official opening program with the singing of the African Union anthem, followed by the Namibian national anthem. Can we have a round of applause now? You have been a valuable audience. Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories of our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun, flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Namibia, land of the brave freedom fight, we have won. Glory to their bravery, whose blood waters our freedom. We give our love and loyalty together in unity. Contrasting beautiful Namibia, Namibia, our country. PIDA, the land of savannas, hold high the banner of liberty. Namibia, our country. Namibia, motherland, we love thee. Thank you, brother. There are some housekeeping regulations.
Yes, thank you very much. A round of applause again for our panelists. Your Excellencies, thank you very much, Pierce, for that. Your Excellencies and the Director and the SADC Deputy Secretary, you are welcome to stay. We are about to get into hearing a PIDA implementation report. So if you could take leave of the podium and go to, you can stay with us. You're welcome to. If you don't want to stay with us, we understand. But we are encouraging you to stay with us. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to hear of the report, I just wanted to give some few announcements that I think will be helpful. All the delegates that may be struggling with visas. Oh, sorry? I think I'm told the high table is suggesting that we have a group photo, and I think that will be acceptable, I think. But may I plead that we do it after the report? Is that okay, or we do it now? Sorry? After the report. Okay, we'll do it after the report. Is that okay, Minister? Thank you, sir. All right. So all the delegates that are struggling with visa issues, please see the Secretariat. Now, this is very important because if you don't, the Namibians will love you so much that they won't allow you to go home. So that's that. Dina, is at the Swakopmund Hotel. It's 19:30. And all delegates will be dropped there, and they'll also be picked up. Just let the transport guys know where to be picked up and where to be dropped off. Now, we were going to have the Namibian Ports Tour on Thursday, but we are now moving it to Wednesday. Please make your intentions known today so that we know. As a matter of fact, I'm told it's a place to visit. I'm told you'll be sad if you do not go, and you've heard it being discussed here. It's one of those tangibles that really you would want to visit and get to see exactly what they are doing there. So, if I may ask, those who are interested, may I see by, we're going back to grade 1 or 2, by show of hands, if there are those who are interested. Well, there's a huge interest. Let the guys know. I think they're already looking at you from behind. So let me see. I think that might, there will be a group photo which will be taken outside the hotel by the stairs. So that will be after the report, which is just about now, by Sime Gray Johnson, who is the head of Regional Integration, Infrastructure and Trade Program at the NEPAD agency. Sime, a round of applause in anticipation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Excellencies, honorable ministers, ambassadors, Deputy Executive Secretary of SADC, representatives of international partners, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. My presentation, I will try to cut it down to 7 minutes because we have moved a few steps forward. You can actually access what I'm about to present. I think most of you have this business card, so you can log on and follow through the presentation. And secondly, as I speak, my colleagues will also be distributing the actual report, and they'll also be distributing the 5% agenda report. So for those that don't wish to follow and hear what I'm saying, which is completely understandable because we are about to have lunch, you can actually just log on to the URL, au-pida.org, and just follow the presentation. So I will try to minimize the intervention. So very quickly, the division that's responsible for the work that we are doing here together with the Department of Infrastructure and Energy, which is headed by Director Sheikh Bade. It's that division that is highlighted as Regional Integration, Infrastructure and Trade, and this is our flagship event. Just to give an overview of what our flagship event hopes to achieve, I won't go through all of it, but quickly just to highlight that amongst other things, the guidance that we get from our principals on how we need to do more and redouble our efforts in terms of infrastructure provisioning, in terms of energy and transportation. PIDA Week also gives us an opportunity to provide hardcore data. And I'll be coming back to that very shortly on how we do that. And of course, certainly, we want to use PIDA Week to demonstrate that PIDA implementation has transformed itself from a continental gathering to actually bringing PIDA to the national government. So through the partnership with SADC, we were able to be here in the beautiful city of Swakopmund. So just to highlight that the overview of PIDA Week, among other things, is to make sure that for the first time, the third PIDA Week has been brought to the African continent itself through going all the way down to a national government and here in the beautiful city of Swakopmund. So very quickly, if you were to go through the actual progress report, which is now before you, you will find out that it's broken down in sections, and this is the table of contents. And this year's report is a bit unique, and there are two highlights. The first being that we also reported on what our partners are doing, and we also highlighted who is responsible for the actual content of the report. So we provided the name of the colleague and also provided the email address just in case you are only particularly interested in a certain section of the report. So something very different. This is the third report. We've had report 1, 2, and this is the third report. So of course the fourth report will be much improved. I will not go deeply into the SDM and the CBN because CEO Dr. Maiki and also the SADC Deputy Executive Secretary talked about the collaboration with SADC. So you can highlight, and it's highlighted, and of course you can read the report on the achievements of the SDM and the CBN, and of course the 5% agenda. But I'll just want to quickly highlight the work we're doing in renewable energy. We do have a renewable energy access project, which in fact has opened a new window of collaboration with African governments. I'll quickly name some 3 key interventions. We were able to advise the government of the Gambia in terms of a wind project, bringing 7 megawatts into the grid, and the colleagues, unfortunately one of them is still stuck in Togo. So when Dr. Maiki talked about the need for us to do more in terms of transport, air transport connectivity, it's real. We have a colleague that had to be routed into 5 cities, and I think even our colleague from the African Development Bank, Mr. Shem, also had to be routed through 5 cities. But anyway, not diverging from the RIP program. The RIP program is a program that really builds on the Africa Renewable Energy Initiative. So we are hoping that when we move to PIDA 2020-2030, renewable energy will be key. We are also supporting Madagascar, we are supporting Lesotho, and certainly we've started the discussions with Mauritania on how to help them develop their renewable energy master plan. Secondly, I want to highlight the collaboration that we have with JICA on the One-Stop Border Post and the work we are also doing under the Move Africa initiative, which is a trade facilitation and a logistics initiative under the leadership of the NEPAD agency with the guidance of the African Union Commission. So these are 2 key things that I want to highlight. And certainly the Permanent Secretary did mention the Presidential Infrastructure Champions Initiative. Namibia is the newest member. 4 projects has been put forward. We have gained a lot of traction on this under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma. We are hoping that in January, when Namibia officially presents its projects as the latest member, we'll also be able to demonstrate impact on the work of the PC, particularly on the 4 projects that Namibia will be showcasing. We also do work, we've highlighted what we have achieved in 2017 on the policy and legal and regulatory environment. It is also highlighted together with the work we're doing with UNECA and GIZ. Just moving on very quickly, in terms of looking at the technical capacity, our dear friend and colleague Shem also highlighted the support that we've received from the African Development Bank that in turn allowed us to strengthen the intervention that we are making through the regional economic communities, and just to name a few, ECOWAS, IGAD, ECAS, and so forth. And that has allowed us to even achieve more results, which we will show when we get to the data collection and the African infrastructure database. I will now invite my colleague, I think it's either George or, actually Tish has arrived. Tish, just stand up. Just to demonstrate, Tish had to go through 4 or 5 capital cities to get here because he was stuck in the Gambia. But we will fix that. Maybe Ephraim, this is the time that we can go live to the virtual PIDA Information Center and just highlight how we were able to demonstrate in terms of data collection and data interpretation, showing how many megawatts and gigawatts have been added to Africa's grid and how many kilometers and miles of rail and road has been added to Africa's corridors. Maybe, I mean, it's a bit difficult to see the actual data sets, but if you were to click on energy or ICT, I don't know which one you want to play with, just very quickly. Well, just to give a gist of it, if you log on to the VIPIC, the portal, you can basically segment by sector, you can segment by region, you can also segment by country and zoom in real time, which will give you an idea as to how the PIDA projects are progressing. So that's the idea of VIPIC, which is fed through a huge database called the African Infrastructure Database, of which all the regional economic communities are connected and supplying data. Of course, this requires a lot of work, but all of that is well elaborated in the report before you. We can go back to my presentation because I have a feeling that colleagues are a bit tired. So this is AID, and as I said, is the backbone of VIPIC. And I will just quickly move. I've already talked about that. The VIPIC, the Virtual PIDA Information Center, also allows for concrete analysis as to which projects are at the concept stage all the way to operations. So all of that information is there. You can click on a project. It will give you all the information you need to see how we track this information. And this has been highlighted. That 26% of the PIDA projects are either pre-feasibility or feasibility, 16 are currently being tendered or structured for tendering, and we are either implementing or under construction about 32%, which is roughly 131 projects out of the 433 projects. So more or less significant improvements. In conclusion, I will just want to thank all our development partners and also of course, certainly the team that put this together, and specifically SADC and the Government of Namibia in allowing us to walk towards this deadline, which is today. A lot of energy and effort went into it, and I congratulate the teams and our colleagues at the regional economic communities to make sure that the PIDA 2017 report is different, but different in the sense that it's just not a narrative, but a reputable and well-confirmed data and statistical tool. And I'm sure it will guide us in terms of policy making and in terms of calibrating and also shaping the second phase of the PIDA program, which will be 2020-2030. I think, Mr. Moderator, Excellencies, Minister, with those words, I think I'll hand back over to you. And as I said, you can just log on and see the details of the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sime. Very succinct, to the point. I mean, next time you talk about doing a report, I'll come and attend because it wasn't boring. Usually reports are boring. but anyway, thank you very much. We are about, I know there is no such thing as free lunch, but I think we've worked hard enough now for the lunch for all of us to go. But just before you go, I thought I would again remind those who have visa issues, today is really the last day to sort that out. So please make sure you speak to the Secretariat. Also, those who want to go to the Namibian port, please register outside. I'm told since the interest has been quite overwhelming, we will do it on Thursday. But I just wanted to tell you about the port. Apparently, that's the most efficient port. It's ranked #1 on the continent by the World Bank. So that's the port you're going to see. And also, the top shipping companies are all docking at this port. Top shipping companies. So, I mean, you have to go and see it. It handles about 6 million tons per annum of goods. And they're represented in Lusaka, Lubumbashi, and also Johannesburg, and Sao Paulo. So yeah, so that's a place to visit indeed. I'm told there's those who will be going for this visit, and if there are those who will be going from the airport, they'll be driven from there to the airport. So I suppose the message, I think if it was a tweet, it would be the sub-tweet is that pack your bags. You know. I think that's about it, except the group photo at the stairs and then lunch. If there's nothing else, George, Osime, I think let's go have lunch after the group photo. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you in the breakaways. Oh.